Thank
Russ.
you for joining me today. Well, Mark was my professor at Portland Community College. I refer to you as my mentor, so high expectations there.
Yeah. Surprised they don't
So
throw
why
you
don't
out.
you introduce yourself?
Sure. Mark DiLoreto. I'm a licensed architect, and I've been an architect for about 35 years now.
What do you mostly do? What projects are you working on?
I'm working on a lot of projects for public infrastructure right now, for water and sewer systems, that type of thing. I do a lot of work for some private developers, so commercial. We do some
Hmm.
work for self-storage units. Apparently, Americans have too much junk to get rid of, so we do a lot of self-storage units. Did about 200,000 square feet of storage units, and they're all 10 by 10, so that's a lot of units. Do stuff for some nonprofits. So those are kind of fun things to do as well.
Okay. I know you mentioned some projects that you did around Oregon. Churches would be one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, I do a lot of church work. It's been a while since I've done some, but earlier in my career, probably about 15 years ago, I did quite a few of them. A lot of master plans for them too. Figure out where buildings should go so they didn't put the building in the wrong location and have to worry about doing something different later. So
Actually, that's what you're known for.
it's true. It comes into play
Yeah.
a lot for my class, but yeah, it's not the only thing we designed, but we did a lot of church work. So that included,
Yeah, it was.
the sanctuaries, the gymnasiums, education buildings,
Mhm.
fellowship halls, that kind of stuff.
That is actually a dream of mine to design a church one day.
Yeah. Well, they're fun.
Maybe one
Although it's
day,
kind of like
maybe.
designing a house for 500 different families, right? And you got to try to please them all. So it can be a bit dicey.
How did you discover the love for this profession?
Sure. I'll give you a little background. I'm the youngest of 5 boys, so I have 4 brothers. And my father was a civil engineer for a local county. So I think something in the construction design trade was probably, preordained. So my father numbered us from 1 to 5 because he could never remember our names, with 1 being the oldest and I'm 5 as the youngest. And if we think about the brothers 1, 3, and 4 went into civil engineering, with 4 actually specializing in structural engineering. And I use them on many of my projects. Brother number 2 had a very artistic tendencies. And so my father suggested maybe he should be think about architecture as a career. That's the first time I heard about it. And I was probably 6 or 7 at the time. My brother's 8 years older
Mhm.
than me. And that's where I first heard about it. After he graduated from high school, he started going to the University of Oregon studying architecture. And the whole family took a trip down to San Francisco, and they had just done a bunch of high rises. And we took a tour down there of all these high
Mhm.
rises. That's where the Transamerica building was just completed. That's the pointy pyramidal shaped building down there. And
Okay.
I was probably 10 or so, and I'm about the same height as a parking meter. So my looking at all these beautiful high-rise buildings and not paying attention to where I'm going, the next thing I know, I'm smack dab into a parking meter. Naturally, my brothers thought that was pretty funny, even though it smarted quite a bit. And that probably explains a lot about why I chose architecture. But anyway, every field trip or every car trip we took once a year or so would have some kind of architectural component in it. And so when I entered high school, I kind of knew that architecture was kind of where I wanted to go. At least wanted to find out more about it. So I focused on classes that would prepare me for architecture. And even in my classes that weren't necessarily architectural related, I'd kind of lean that direction. For instance, we had an English research paper, and I did my research paper on Frank Lloyd Wright, right? Who else? So,
Of
but I wasn't going
course.
to type it up. I did the whole thing with handwriting, like an architect would be, the capital letters and everything, the lines. It's like, what a waste of
Oh,
time.
that is
But
awesome. Did your handwriting changed over the years?
not the architectural stuff. My script handwriting and my signature have changed quite a bit from over the years as I got lazier and lazier. But luckily,
Wow.
the penmanship for architecture has stayed pretty good.
For me, the handwriting, I used to write properly. I'm sorry to interrupt you real
No, you're
quick.
good.
I used to write properly, but once I discovered architecture, I transformed my writing into all capitals, trying to mimic
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
famous
exactly.
architects.
Yeah. We had the lead holders where you shave the inch so it was like a chisel shape,
Mhm.
so your verticals would be narrow and your horizontals would be fat, kind of thing. That's
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
paper was like. they had a primitive computer in the career guidance counselor's office. And so it's kind of
Mhm.
like those online questionnaires to take the questionnaire, see how close you are or what character you are in Star Trek, right? You know, whatever. Well, after one try, actually, I kind of knew what the answer should be to get me to go. And it said, you should be in some kind of design field like graphic design or advertising or
Uh-huh.
architecture. Surprise, surprise. So
That is very
I,
interesting because I personally did not know what I wanted to do till later in life. And actually, you were one of the people who encouraged me to study it further. And thank you for that.
well, you might thank me now. We'll see how about in a few years, huh?
Hey, so far so good. So
Oh, good. Well, that's
we'll
good
see.
news. I took all the drafting classes that they had to offer every year. They'd have, mechanical drafting, then architectural drafting, and I actually won best in school prize that City of Portland would host, and we'd have a big dinner for each school would pick one or two people from their school as the best architectural draftsperson or whatever it was, and I was able
Hmm.
to win one of that honor. And then I joined the local Architectural Explorer Post. I don't know if you know what Explorer
What
Post
is
is, but
that?
it's the Boy Scouts once you graduate into high school. And so
Okay.
they had Explorer Posts like police Explorer Posts or fire um,
Hmm.
men Explorer Posts. They also had one for architecture, and it was sponsored by SOM, the big architectural firm that was in
Hmm.
town here.
Hmm.
They did Big Pink down there with Pietro
Oh,
Bellucci,
okay.
and
Okay.
we'd meet downtown once or twice a month and
Hmm.
learn things, and that was pretty interesting to do. And I thought, as I knew so much about architecture in high school. I look back now and I knew absolutely nothing. But you at that time you thought, "Hey, I'm smart." So I went and applied to the University of Oregon. It was the only school in Oregon that offers an architectural program. I lived in state, so I had to do in-state tuition because I paid my own way
Uh-huh.
through, and I had to be able to earn it during the summer, which we could do back then. And put my portfolio together, and they were kind enough to accept me into their program, which is a good thing because I had no plan B. I just assumed, hey, they're going to take me.
Wait,
And
you mentioned
fortunately,
that was the only school that had architectural program
yeah, back in the
at,
80,
at that time.
1980.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll consider
It's,
myself lucky then.
yeah, you get an opportunity to have a couple. Even Washington State across the river actually also has one, I believe. So, yeah, in the
Yes,
local
yes,
area here.
they do.
So, the freshman year, you had studio, which is where you get a project, given a program, and you put together a design, right?
Hmm.
And we had that 2 of the 3 terms. The first studio I took, I was just 17. I was young because my birthday was in the fall. So I was really young. 17, can you imagine going to college away? But I did a nice little, our first project was for a park, and I did a nice little picnic shelter for it. Nothing special, but nothing awful. But there was a 5th-year senior that came down and just read me the riot act and tore me a new one. I'm going, what the heck? I don't know if he was trying to encourage people to leave the program so there'd be fewer architects, more work for him. I don't know what the deal was, or if he just got up on the wrong side of the bed. But at that point, I
That's
decided
interesting.
I'm never going to give a review to a student or a coworker like that ever. That's, why do you need to treat people so poorly? Anyway, so that was kind of an interesting start to my architectural college career. And then, studios, we used to devote so much time to them. We'd often work like 80-hour weeks in addition to the rest of the school on our projects. Sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, get back to it. Part of it was because it was exciting to do, it was enjoyable, but also a lot of pressure because you wanted to make the best project you could have before your review. So we were spending, 24 hours up, not taking any naps at all or sleeping at all, and just trying to get the project finished. And we were so zoned out by the time we got a review, we couldn't remember a thing the reviewer said to us. It's like, what a waste of time.
That happened to me.
Yeah.
I stayed up working on a project because we had a presentation, and we had to draft everything by hand. A plan consisted of floor plan sections, elevations, and we had to explain our concept as well. So I stayed up that night, I think till 4, and we had class in the morning and maybe in the afternoon. I have 2 classes in one day, but in any case, when I had to present, I wrote things down, but I have no idea what I was talking about.
That was such an awful thing. I mean, that's one of the things that you said. What did you learn? You learned that that's not really very helpful. It's not, balanced. By the time we were
Yes.
seniors, we figured out that, get it done the day before. Even if it's not done, at least you'll be able to get some good reviews and feedback on it. So, and then I made so many snap decisions trying to get this done. I don't know if you've been there, but one time, you go, okay, I got to figure out where the store goes or the window goes or this little bit. I haven't finished this part out. I got to figure out what it's going to look like graphically. I was so brain dead that I couldn't actually pack to come home for spring break, and my roommate had to pack for me. I couldn't make any more decisions. I couldn't make how many pair of socks I needed to take, how many pairs of I was just
Yeah, I've been there.
so another thing we learned is that, not quite needed to be so much pressure on it. Sleep and scheduling could help that. During the summers, my brother, who was the architect came before me, had started his own firm. And so I went and worked for him during the summers actually to get some experience in architecture. And then I graduated in winter term with a Bachelor of Architecture degree. That's a 5-year degree. And then I had a minor in Architectural History of Western Cultures, which you probably saw a lot in my class, going through all the various architectural periods. So the next
goal, have your lectures.
Do you?
Yes.
Burn them now. Oh, wait.
No, I learned a lot. That's why good. I still have them.
That's good. I appreciate references. That.
Yeah.
The next goal then is getting licensed, which takes about 3 years of experience. And back in those days, they only offered the exam once a year. So I had to go out and get the experience by working for firms. So the first job I had was a small firm in Northwest Portland. I figured I'd put together my portfolio looking for this job, right? And I was getting married that June, which is about 4 months away. So I wanted to have a job before I got married.
Oh, wow.
So I sent letters of introduction to about 25 of the top firms in Portland. And I thought, well, it'll take a while for them to respond to me and I'll have time to put my portfolio together for looking at it. I got a call the next day. One of the firms asked me to come over and interview. They interviewed me and they hired me on the spot. So I was like, there goes the portfolio. And then I worked for them for about 9 months. And then my brothers asked me to join his firm as a draftsperson, architectural intern, because he needed some work, or needed some help with his work. So I worked for them for a while. And then the economy kind of slowed down. So I was loaned out to another firm. This is my third job now. And these were horrible,
in the field,
horrible people in the field, right? These are horrible people to work for. I was desperate because we were planning to go to Europe for 5 months. And I just wanted to work until that period, which was about, 10 months away. But they were absolutely horrible. So it was a good lesson for me on how to treat people. It's like, oh my gosh, it seems so obvious to me how to treat people kindly, as opposed to thinking that they're just, scum of the earth and you just draft that drawing, whatever, so
yeah,
that was very beneficial for me. So they eventually laid me off, which was good for both of us. And then I got one of the best jobs I ever had. This was a firm that I learned to do all the master planning, and they had great projects. They worked at the Oregon Zoo. They did a master plan there. We did master plans for zoos throughout, the Northwest here, or master plans for event center, really exciting projects, and taught me a lot about master planning, which was really, really helpful. And then we said it was time for my Oregon test. I'd actually worked enough for 3 years to do it. And back then it was 6 or 7 sections.
Okay, and now it's 6.
Is it 6 now? And you will have 3 days to do it. You went down to Salem at the state fairgrounds. Anybody from Oregon who wanted to be licensed, or anybody from anywhere who wanted to be licensed in Oregon, had to go to this place and take their exam. And so you'd have 3 days of it. The second day, this was at June, so it was like 90 degrees outside. The cooling units on top of the roofs overheated and set off the fire alarm. But the proctor said, stay in your seats. It's not a problem. So we're trying to finish like a structural exam with this blaring in the background of this fire alarm.
So you had the perfect environment for that.
Perfect. The final day is an 8-hour design test. So they give you a design program, and you have to bring your own board, which back then you bought a board with a Mayline, that's the parallel bar that goes up and down, and you brought your own triangles, and you brought your own pens and pencils and everything, and you set up on those old church style tables, that have the fold out legs that come out like this, right? Well, one of the competitors, about 2 tables in front of me, the leg folded underneath on him. Everything of his went shifted down onto the floor.
No.
And the rest of us, we're actually quite a community at that point, because we studied together prior to this, because they had study guides and stuff like that. So we're a really close community. And so we all want to get up to help him. Proctor, sit down. He'll take care of it by himself.
Wow. Having same classes, same people really develops that friendship. So develops a culture in a sense.
Yeah, and I think that's missing now because you can take the exam anytime you want, and you don't have to take the full thing at
Yeah.
once. So I'm not even sure if people study together anymore for it. And I think it's disappointing because we learned and a lot of those people who licensed with me are actually partners or retiring now from partners in
Oh, I
firms,
see.
because they really actually rose
Yeah.
up quite high in their firms. It was a great group of people.
It's very interesting because we had a conversation recently with one of our professors, and the question was who wants to actually become a licensed architect. And out of group of, I don't know, maybe 100 people, maybe five or up to 10 the most raises their hands that want to be licensed architects. I'm bringing this up because you said you don't know if people study together. Just the groups of people who actually want to be licensed nowadays, it's not a large group of people, which is surprising to me. Why would you go to architecture school and not wanting to be an architect as your end goal? But you don't have that many people to study with nowadays.
No.
And
Well, and I think
everything,
part
you're
of the
right, everything is online.
Yeah, exactly. So you go to a computer testing area and take your exam. I was fortunate to pass the whole thing the first time. It's kind of funny because
Wow.
my best friend and I took it at the same time. Neither one of us wanted to call the other person. We both passed it because we were concerned, what if the other person didn't pass? How is this going to play out? But we
Oh,
finally
okay.
got the nerve up to call each other and let us know that we both passed at the same time, which was kind of
Wow,
funny.
that's awesome. And those are, for those who do not know, those exams are long. At least what they're telling us nowadays. So you have 6 sections. You have 6 sections. And I think 4 of them, the exams are 3.5 hours, and 2 of them, the exams are 5 hours long. You have, you can take one exam once a year, I believe. Actually, no, 3 times, but you have 60-day period in between them if you fail. And then you have, I think, 5 years to complete everything.
Right. You have 5 years to complete everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going to get your wisdom teeth pulled. You really want to do it all at once because you really don't want to go back and have the second set pulled out. I mean, it's like let's get this all taken care of. So after I passed it, I was working for the same firm and
Mhm.
did master plans. But now I was a project architect on a lot of projects, which is kind of a proud thing for me. Hey, cool, I'm a project architect instead of just the architectural
Definitely.
intern. It gives you a little thing,
Yep.
great title. And then my wife and I, in May, left for a 5-month sabbatical to tour Europe. So we flew into Athens, Greece, traveled from the
Oh, that's
south
awesome.
up to the north as the weather changed, through the summer, and
Mhm.
flew out of Gatwick Airport in London. On the way out 5 months later. It was great. And I mentioned I got a minor in architectural history of Western civilization, so we just
Mhm.
looked at all the architecture we could find in there. It was really quite a great trip to have.
That
When
is
we got
awesome.
back, the economy was tanking. So the firm I was with these great master plans didn't have any work. So they loaned me out to another firm that had about 17 people and was growing pretty quickly. And I started working there and they hired me on as an associate, which just meant I had a little more responsibility. I had more projects to cover and had staff underneath me. Um,
Mhm.
and I worked there for about 4 or 5 years. And then my brothers asked me if I wanted to be a partner in this firm. I said, "Wow, yeah, that sounds kind
Mm.
of fun." And I'd
Wait,
be in charge of, yeah,
can I ask you a question here?
absolutely.
Do you have a brother that owns an architectural firm?
hmm That's the
That
one I
is
was coming in
funny
partner with.
because I was talking to that guest that we had today at school. His name is Andy Powell, I think.
Okay.
And when I mentioned you, he asked me if you have a brother because he worked with a person previously with the same last name.
Oh
And
yeah.
I didn't know what to answer, but I told him that I'll ask you. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that was him.
Yeah. I have a brother who's an architect and has his firm, and that's what he asked me to partner with. I also have a brother, as I mentioned, who's a structural engineer
Hmm.
who owns the firm, and we also work with them quite often, both of us. So I worked with as a partner for my brother, in charge of basically staffing and HR, which is stuff I really enjoy doing, and mentoring. And
Hmm.
then in about 2005, again, the economy started to tank. So now we're on to our seventh job, where I was hired by the firm in Vancouver to develop their architectural department. Because at that point they were only doing land use planning and landscape
Mm,
architecture. So they wanted to
mm-hmm.
do an architectural department. So I developed that for them. And that's where I've been for the last, 19 years almost, whatever. So since
I
2005.
see.
And then in 2021, work was getting a little slow. So a small firm reached out to me in Selwood and asked if I could help mentor them and help their graphics a little bit. Because computer graphics, especially Revit,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really hold a candle to what the old hand drafting used to be. And I did hold hand drafting. So I was able to upgrade their graphics a little bit. And at that same time, PCC reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in teaching the Architecture 200 Principles of Architectural Design. I said yes. See if I can't warp some young
Okay.
minds.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So that brings us to now. So the theme is I've had 7 or 8 jobs in the profession, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of a fickle profession, because construction does this kind of thing depending on the economy. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade any of it because it gave me a wide breadth of experiences. I learned what kind of firm I wanted to be involved with or create,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of firm I did not want to be involved with or create. It was very helpful in that way. There's some, painful lessons to be learned, but it was very helpful in terms of how I want to operate as a human with these other people that are in my firm. And it may have been different had I worked for a larger firm. They may have been able to handle the swings better, not necessarily, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to work for a smaller firm because I wanted the breadth of experiences of working in a smaller architectural firm. I didn't want to get pigeonholed into doing only one type of architecture or only one set of details. I wanted to be able to do a lot of different things, go out in the field for construction administration or bring the client in or do interviews. So a smaller firm gave me that opportunity. And I love
Yes,
learning.
that's what I hear too from our professors, and that was true in my experience as well. Because I got hired by a firm in Vancouver, but they're a small firm, so you get to do different tasks, different things, and days are unpredictable for the most part.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy this aspect where you can get your hands on different topics, different projects, tasks, and you really develop that aspect of the, I guess, professional life.
Right. And if you work for a large firm, the benefit is probably a little more stability, maybe, but also you get to work
Mm,
on larger projects, right? I mean, my firms that I work at probably will never do a large university, meeting hall or assembly area. When I
mhm.
was at that larger firm where I was an associate, we actually did a large fairgrounds, and that was like a large project that I had worked on. But for the most part, the smaller ones don't quite have that size of a project coming through, but they can still be exciting. Even the smallest projects can be jewels.
You're talking as a professional, years gone by since you have a formal education. I'm in the process of that, but how much did you know about architecture, or what did you know about architecture before? You mentioned that you were exposed to it during high school, but how much did you know before going to college?
Yeah, I thought I knew everything, right? I mean, what 17-year-old doesn't exactly, right? So, and I was a good student, right? I could take tests very well. I was in, almost straight A's through high school kind of a thing. So my first term at college, I go, this is going to be so easy for me. So the typical load is about 14 to 15 credits. I took 18 because,
Mhm.
I'm smart. I got a D in calculus. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this is a lot more different than high school. It's like, so I know it's not architecture related, but it's still a matter of the change of difference between high school and college and
Yes.
the courses you need to take and the lack of hand holding that happens in college, right? If I'd have been getting a D in high school, there'd have been someone tutoring me, the teacher would come over, so let's go after school, we'll take it. The guy didn't care that I was failing, whatever.
Yeah, you have consequences here.
But I would have paid more attention to my theory classes. And I'm not sure that was because it was not a lack of interest, probably just a lack of intelligence. I mean, so some of these theory courses are pretty deep, right? I mean, we talked about some of that stuff in my class, and
Yes. Hmm.
I understand more of it, and I wish I had them earlier. I mean, I think the class that I offer with some of these principles would be nice if students had it like their first term or second term at PCC so that they can actually use some of these principles in the rest of their work. I mean, I've had a couple students tell me,
Mm,
well, I should have taken this sooner. So I wish I'd have paid more attention to some
mm,
of the theory classes. Um, I also chose my projects or my studios based on what the project was, and I should have chosen
Okay.
my projects based on who the teacher was, right?
Why is that?
Because I could have learned a lot more from the better teachers than I did from some of the teachers who had really cool projects, right? I mean, that's gonna be a great project, but maybe didn't push me as far as they could have, or give me enough insight
Mm,
as they could have. So my couple last years of studio, I started to realize I need to take, well, that guy's a professor that really knows his stuff and is able to explain it well, the theory and all that kind of thing. So I want to take my
mhm,
classes with him. And so I started to change my attitude about how to pick the studio.
mm. Yeah, for me, I think it was for me. It's a different approach, though. I liked the theory and philosophy behind architecture. I think even before
Mm,
I really got excited about the projects that you can create. Because for me, what was fascinating, especially learning um, the history of architecture from your class, and additionally, I have tons of books as well, like reading on my own time, about
mhm.
architecture, theory of architecture, tectonics, like all these topics. So going to PCC, I already had some knowledge about architecture. Like I think I pretty much read all of Francis Ching books.
Yeah.
Form, order,
Mhm.
and I forget the other one, space,
Space, form, and
introduction
order.
to architecture.
Mhm.
So I really enjoyed those.
We had some students in the architectural program, and you knew they were not going to make it past that first year because they were
Mm.
up there on, um, mommy or daddy's money, and they spent all their time at the nearest bar. This is just not they didn't care, right? I mean, they were just there to have a good
Yeah.
time, and so, I mean, I think you can balance that so you can have a good time and do architecture, but one or the other all 100% of the time probably isn't the best.
Yeah, definitely have to make sacrifices during certain periods of time. Decide what
Yeah,
is more important, I guess, priorities.
yeah. Well, and then have
Yeah.
the goals, right? You have your plans and your goals, right? And your goal is to graduate, so you map out how you're gonna get there. Your goal is to be licensed, you map out how you're gonna get there, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's something I realized actually this year because up to that point, I was trying to balance multiple things at once. And then seeing that I'm actually struggling in all of the areas that I'm trying to balance, had to set my priorities straight. So, when you first discovered that, did you know what the professionals in the field are actually doing, or
I
how
had a
would the day of in life of an architect look like?
One of the other things I was a part of was the Talented and Gifted program had just started, TAG, and, they knew I was interested in architecture. So I think I was in 8th grade, and I was hosted by one of the partners at ZGF, one of the larger firms in Portland, still are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so he walked me around and had me show me what all the different people did and what they were doing at that time, took me out to lunch. It was a really great eye-opening thing about this, what the large firm does and how the people work there. I
Mm-hmm.
was also able to go to the Forest Service and talk to some of their architects. They had architects on the Forest Service at that time and find out what they
Okay.
had done. So and then my brother was actually had his own firm. I was during the summers of college. I was actually working for him, so I kind of learned that direction.
Oh, okay.
Um, but no, I'm sure the initial thought was, here I am, Mr. Brady. I just design homes, right? That's all I do is just design something. It's nothing else to it, right? And I give it to the contractor. He goes and builds it. So there's never any problems with it. They just do it. So I probably didn't know all the things you had to do. Getting the projects, selling the client
Mm-hmm.
on the ideas. Going through all the jurisdictional hoops to get the project built. So yeah, a lot of that stuff I had no clue about, and we just kind of blissfully unaware of it.
Yeah, yeah. For me, your class, especially, I had a presentation towards the end of the term where you had some slides on what do architects actually do, what type of education is required, and some other aspects of it. And that was eye opening for me personally, because I did not know some things. For example, managing the paperwork or projects, contracts, all of these things. I had no idea that architects actually had to do that. For me, it was more of an idea where just to design things, and I'm
Mhm.
not talking about like major things, but you would always find something small, like some sticks in the ground. Because I grew up in Russia, so we had different, we worked, I would say, more with our hands. We had classes in school where people, professors would teach us how to use the tools, how to use them properly, how to create things. So from the early age, I liked putting things together. And my dad, he used to make custom furniture,
Mm.
so I would help him out, and just this aspect of being a precise, following order, and the artistic part of it really got me thinking about architecture. But that's all I knew.
Yeah.
I thought, architecture is drawing designs, and then one day
Pretty
a building
pictures
is
of
going to be
pretty
built.
buildings.
Exactly.
Well, but it's problem solving too, which is where a great deal of, the endorphins come through, right? When you're going, I solved this and I solved it in an aesthetically pleasing way. That's pretty important, and maybe it's the way that, is creative such that not many other people would have figured that out. And, that happens every once in a while. And as you mentioned, it can happen on the smallest thing. How you can get a layout of a bedroom to work correctly
Hmm.
by how you place the closet or the doors to the bathroom or the windows. And even that solving becomes, a bit of a challenge and ability to have a win when you solve it.
Let me ask you this: do you think there's a disconnect between the design professionals and the general public?
I think
Um,
so. Probably deservedly,
and
but yeah, I think there might be. Because they think what we thought when we first started, right? Well, architects just design expensive, pretty buildings. That's all they are there for. I mean, a lot of developers think of us as necessary evils. We have to stamp a drawing for their project because the jurisdiction says so. They just assume not have us because all we're going to do is cost them money. Um, and but there are a lot of clients that also understand that there's something to be said for, you know, you can build an aesthetic building as cheap as you can, an ugly one, or one that's organized as cheap as you can, that's unorganized. That will actually enhance the people who use its ability to use the building, become more productive. You know,
Mhm.
we can actually influence that in subtle ways. But it's more than even looks, right? Because that's kind of a taste thing. But we can design it so that they actually can enhance the way they live in that house. We can think about things. Man, we talk about, the ability to have a stage for the serendipity or to
Mhm.
for the ad libbing, right? When we make a stairway,
Mhm.
do we pop out the landing so it actually becomes a window seat where people can actually rest and have a little alcove? Or do we put in the area around the fireplace, make it nice and sheltered? Or how can we make this space something that they don't even know they need necessarily, but we can make it give them clues on how to use these spaces.
So
So
it goes
I think
beyond materiality, just
it
beyond the
does.
materials.
Right. We talked about Charlie Moore's that house where he did
Mhm.
those stairs that at the beach for that beach cabin where the stairs are really a large part of the house, but along the stairs are where they have all these shelves for their books that you would read at the beach or, toys, puzzles, that kind of stuff. So you
Mhm.
utilize that space, but it also still gives you this opportunity to experience verticality and lift and different planes that allowed variety to your house. In
Mhm.
my house here, I had stacked bedrooms next to the stairway, and the stairway was enclosed. I actually removed
Mhm.
the upper stairway and the walls around the stairway. I'm sorry, the upper bedroom and the walls around the stairway, so that when you go up and down the stairs, you actually look over to the space. You actually experience coming up into a two-story volume. And then I have a balcony that goes along
Mm.
that leads to all the other bedrooms on the upper floor. So it does two things. It actually connects all the bedrooms around this common space, which actually is our music room where our grand piano is. But it also gives you the sense of overlook or shelter if you're down beneath it, or as you move up
Mhm.
the stairs, you actually begin to, the Cartesian level as you move through your house gives you all these different viewpoints that actually become much more
Mhm.
enjoyable. I actually, love walking up and down my stairs because I get this opportunity with the sun coming in, about it changing through the railing and just seeing the various views that I get from it. But some
Definitely.
people, if they're designing Thomas Jefferson, he put his stairs in closets because he didn't think they were that important. I disagree. I think the stairs actually have this opportunity to be very dynamic. And one thing, you're moving up and down, but also they have opportunity as you visually look at things, as you change your viewpoint around them.
Oh, I agree with you. I had a client once where they wanted to hide the staircase, and the reasoning was because nobody's doing it anymore. And nobody's nobody's building staircases where they're visible, but there's so many examples online that you can look up where staircases look like a masterpiece, something
Well,
more than just the vertical connection point with 3 foot wide clearances.
right, exactly. Exactly. Try getting, if it's a double back stair, try getting a queen size or a king size mattress up that thing.
Exactly.
So,
Practicality.
but then you can also use it, make it do double duty like Charlie Moore did, where he adds shelving along the
Mhm.
side of it as it comes up or whatever, so that they can justify spending a little more time and energy on that stair.
What does architecture mean to you? If you had to describe it to
Well,
somebody who never heard about it, how would you describe it?
I go back to my classmate Vitruvius back in
I
the
actually
first
read his
century
book.
BC. Did you?
10 books of architecture. Yes,
Yeah,
completed the
yeah.
whole thing.
Oh my gosh, how was that?
I
Did it make any
actually really
sense?
enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yes, I enjoyed
Sometimes
it a lot.
their language is so difficult to interpret. Like, what are they saying? It's like, because it's written very uniquely. But he talked about architecture being problem solving, and the problem you have to solve are
Mhm.
the three legs, right? The
Yeah.
function, firmness, and delight, right? Function is,
Mhm.
does it solve the issues that the client needs for its uses, right? Do the rooms line up in the
Yeah.
right direction so that they can use it correctly? Firmness, is it going to still be there 3 months from now? Is it not going to fall down? Is it going to actually keep the outside out and the inside in and not be knocked over in the next windstorm? Are the materials
Mhm.
durable so that it's actually somewhat environmentally friendly? And then the last one is the delight, which we've been talking about previously, about how can you make these little efforts on various pieces to increase the excitement of that house and the usability of it and how it enhances the people who live in their
Mhm.
lives.
Well, I guess that would be it for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
your
having me
time.
on your
I
podcast.
really enjoyed the conversation, and guess till next time.
It's been an honor. Thank you very much, Russ. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Marky. Thank
Good.
you.
Bye.